Hi, my name is Gordon. I oversee media production for our programs, which includes filming, editing, producing content and ensuring everything runs smoothly from a technical perspective. I've had the privilege of serving with Family First for around 7 to 8 years, and what I value most about being part of this organisation is not only the incredible team spirit, but also the deep sense of respect and gratitude we share for the opportunity to stand up and advocate for New Zealand families, especially in a time like this. Reaching 20 years is a significant milestone. It reflects the faithfulness and dedication of everyone who's been involved in serving families across New Zealand. And most importantly, it's a testament to the ongoing support of people like you, because without your support, this work would simply not be possible.
Thanks, Gordy. I'm stoked to have Gordon on team because he builds great TV studios, he does amazing production, video production, and he makes us look good. Would you consider a special financial gift to recognise our significant milestone? It's our 20th anniversary. If you feel we've spoken on your behalf, you've appreciated our common sense and credible approach to all the issues in the media and public domain over the past 20 years, please join Gordon and me and the significant social conservative movement that we're building in New Zealand. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Go to familyfirst.nz/donations to invest. Help us to promote strong families, marriages, religious freedom, and the value of life based on the footprint of faith, which has underpinned New Zealand for generations. We want to be a voice for your values. Thanks, Gordy. Back to work, mate.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Solid Ground, where, as the name suggests, we sit on a firm foundation of, I would suggest, good politics, ethics, faith and more to discuss the issues around New Zealand and around the world. It is, of course, as well, a nice double entendre or a pun to having a good solid ground of coffee as well. Now, regulars would know that normally at this point I would say to you this is a live show that you can comment, which of course you still can, but it is not this morning a live show. In fact, currently I'm in Perth in Australia. And so I pre-recorded this solid ground because at basically 7 a.m. New Zealand time would put me at about 3 a.m. in Perth, and I'd have only just landed a few hours prior. So it would have been possibly an entertaining solid ground as I was tired, jet-lagged, and waking at 3 a.m. Perth time. So this is a pre-record. Please know that any comments you are making through all our channels, including Family First YouTube and Facebook page, I'll get to look at later. But this morning, because as I say, it's a pre-record, I won't be responding as I normally do. As I say, we're in Perth, both Rachel and I. We're actually here for a classical education conference. Rachel, as you know, is a teacher and actually now in the classical education space. And it's an area of interest to me for a variety of reasons, including, of all things, I studied Latin and Attic Greek at university and have a real interest actually in how we educate, I would say, more roundly, more fully, and in some ways actually, and it won't surprise you, learning from the past. Classical education is what's underpinned generations of people. So it's going to be a fascinating conference. It actually starts today, but as I say, with the time zones what they are, I'm doing this as a pre-record. As always, there are no shortage of issues, but the one that was catching my eye, and it's been with me for a few weeks, is actually around the puberty blockers. issue in New Zealand, and then from that, how overseas media are reporting things, what New Zealand's media is not telling you, and then a suggestion or a couple of suggestions of why New Zealand's media is operating the way it does. Now look, first and foremost, the puberty blockers decision. You remember the government, I think it was just before Christmas last year, announced a ban on prescribing puberty blockers to new patients with gender dysphoria. This was a very welcome decision. It sits in line with all the international evidence. In fact, since then, there's been even more evidence. You might remember, I think it was last week here on Solid Ground, I highlighted what's been happening in Finland. Another study has come out showing that actually the mental health, the psychological well-being of people gets worse after they transition, after they use the likes of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and so forth. And not just worse, substantially worse. Suicide rates as well go up. So the lies, and that's all you can call them, the lies which trans activists, the likes of Partha and WPATH, keep pushing out there to say, no, you must put your kid onto puberty blockers because it'll save them from suicide and they'll be happier, is just being proven untrue. And I see it now that people who continue to spread those lines know that they're spreading falsities. They are now deliberately lying. There's just so much evidence. So the government, as I say, I thought got it right. They were not going to take puberty blockers off those already using them. That's going to be a discussion between, obviously, patient and doctor. But there was to be, for those, I think it was under 18, that it was not to be prescribed. And again, makes sense. It's medically sound. But as you probably were aware, the radicals in Partha, they are a group of, well, I just said it, they're radicals. Some are in the medical field, some are just literally activists. They've taken the government effectively to court and doing what is now called a judicial review. So this new regulation that the government's put forward is currently on hold. But there's a case, I think it's in May, so it's coming up pretty soon, where basically the Crown, or the government, is going to be defending its position. And I think, and look, I'm no lawyer, I mean, part of what the argument will be is whether or not this is a reasonable decision or not, and so that'll be a lot around medical information and facts. And as I say, even since the government made the decision, there's been more and more evidence around actually the problems with puberty blockers in themselves, the harms of the puberty blockers, but also that actually they don't do what is promised. But the other thing to bear in mind too, it's a judicial review. So it's also a question is, did the Minister of Health in this case, do the appropriate legal steps? Personally, I can't see how he couldn't have. Ministers are allowed to make decisions. That's the whole point. But as I say, I'm no lawyer. Can't pretend to be. There's all these ins and outs. But it's a wider comment than just puberty blockers. I'm forever amazed how ministers, elected officials are making decisions, and yet often activist courts override them. And it's not just in this trans space at all. So anyway, that's sort of the introductory, and it's been on my mind, as I say, because the court case is coming up, and we here at Family First will be watching this really, really closely. But what's been striking me in recent weeks here in New Zealand are many of the stories that get very little coverage here in New Zealand. Now, this is in the wider space of sort of sex, rejecting surgeries, cross-sex hormones, puberty blockers. You don't get much talk down here, and certainly not much deep coverage or recurring coverage from New Zealand media. One good example is in the state of New York, of all places, one of the more liberal states in the US, alongside California. A detransitioner has, as the headline says, been awarded millions of US dollars in a malpractice verdict against, I think, at least her psychiatrist or psychologist and the surgeon for malpractice, that they were not told, the detransitioner was not told the risk, was effectively experimented on. Now this is groundbreaking in a legal space, because a court case like this sets a precedent. And precedents are very, very important. So I expect we will see many more cases now in the United States. There are quite a large number of detransitioners. We had Chloe Cole over 2 years ago to our forum on the family. You might remember Chloe. We've done interviews with her as well, so check out the Family First website. But this was quite, as I say, groundbreaking. And also it shows, a court in a liberal state like New York said, you know what, this was malpractice. What happened to this child, this young person, shouldn't have happened. But as I say, there's been very limited reporting of this here in New Zealand. Cursory at best. You've also got situations like this. This is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom. It almost beggars belief, but some of their documentation there is allowing these sex-rejecting actions, again, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries, down to the age of 7. Now, I better be really, really clear here. We're not talking surgeries on 7-year-olds, but the activists are willingly taking on 7-year-old children and discussing and exploring gender dysphoria. Even the discussions at a 7-year-old level is insane. Okay, so we can park the question of puberty blockers and so forth. As I say, I doubt they're being deployed at that age because they're not even pubescent yet. So that's not what we're discussing. But the idea that these, I don't even want to call them health professionals, I think they're charlatans, are sitting down with 7-year-olds, or as young as 7, to talk about gender treatment. Really they should be sitting down with the parents and asking them, the parents, what is going on? What are these ideas that have been put into this child's head? Sitting down with their teachers and others. Because, if you've had a 7-year-old, you know their emotional maturity at this stage. And so really, this is not help, this is not treatment, this is indoctrination. And the sad reality, if they are capturing 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and you've got 10, 11, 12, they're setting them on a conveyor belt to, as I say, with that Finnish study, affirming that it goes worse, their mental health will get worse. So I just think it's exceptionally sad. And again, very limited coverage here in New Zealand. I think on this one there was nothing at all. And also related to, and this is more new news, this is again in the UK. This is a nurse, her name is Jennifer Meller. I possibly pronounced that wrong, could be Malay. But Jennifer has just won a case against not having to or being forced, compelled to use pronouns. So she was a nurse, and several years ago, a biological man, a paedophile and prisoner, who then decided it was a great time to identify as a woman, insisted aggressively to her that she must use his preferred pronouns. She refused. She said, look, I'll use your name, and my words here, but I'm not going to play the game of pronouns. So she refused to use this prisoner, this sexual prisoner, as in I believe it's reported that he was a paedophile, the man's preferred pronouns. So as you would expect in the UK, and it would probably happen here in New Zealand, hauled through the various processes over years, trying to basically force her to lose her job. Long and short, she's won the case. The case has come out and says actually, or a settlement as it says there, she's had a settlement with the various hospitals and groups. And it's a victory. It's a victory first and foremost for free speech. There's two elements at least to free speech. One is you're welcome to say what you wish to say, but also you cannot be compelled to say things you don't believe in. And I think it's really important in cases like this to stress that there is a way around discussions around pronouns or people who are trans-identifying. You just, use their name. If they want to be called Barry or Katie or whatever, just use their name. But you don't have to play the pronoun game. So again, I think this is a win. But as to date, I haven't seen any reporting here in New Zealand. Happy to be corrected on that, but it doesn't suit the narrative, it seems, which probably doesn't surprise any of us. Sorry, got to get the cup of coffee going. So I just thought those were interesting cases that you're not hearing about in New Zealand. But what we do have is, and particularly around now, the puberty blockers themselves. You had the likes of New Zealand Doctor, putting forward its opinions, which again, independent newspaper, they're welcome to do what they will, but by and large only reporting from the pro-use of puberty blockers, quoting the likes of Partha. Very rarely, and including here with the New Zealand Herald that did a puff piece, they don't portray the other side. So this one in the Herald in particular as I say, it was just a puff piece. It was, I think it was, if I recall correctly, one, because I read this a couple of weeks ago and had it prepped for the show and then keep, as you know, getting distracted. It was a family sharing their concerns and again pushing out all the lies that they've been told. Oh, I need this because it's going to improve my mental health. I just need time, and so on. They're all being disproven. I mean, one, it's not just me saying this. The evidence is out there and being accepted around the world. But the Herald ran this puff piece to make it sound like there was just an absolutely horrid decision by the government. As I say, no pushback in the article whatsoever. No quoting from paediatricians, endocrinologists, and others. Never going, look, they could have come to talk to Family First, Speak Up for Women, Gin Spec, the two detransitioners that we have, Izzy and Zara. The media here in New Zealand don't touch these situations at all. And I think that's very telling, again, of the ideological capture that happens. So as I say, not only do we seem to have New Zealand media rooting for Partha and the other radical trans activists to have this puberty blocker ban reversed, they're also not telling the full story. They don't give you the full story. And you might remember from Tuesday, he was talking about John Campbell saying how he likes a diversity of views. It's all about representation. Well, let's just see with the likes of Radio New Zealand, who are constantly pushing for more use of puberty blockers, more use of cross-sex hormones, full support of that, mutilating surgeries on young people, all under their nice umbrella of sort of trans identification. Let's see if John actually does bring on some dissenting voices, where the Morning Report would be prepared to talk to our detransitioners and others. But I think one of the reasons, and Bob's written an excellent blog on this, I think one of the reasons we have to understand is our legacy media are captured by radical activists. And one of the mechanisms is what they call their rainbow tick, and there's other similar dynamics, sort of pride awards and so forth. It's like a priesthood which gets inserted into your organization, where not only do you have to conform to their dogmas, but they are watching you, in this case the mainstream media, all the time, and actually influencing, guiding and controlling the narrative. We've certainly seen that in the United Kingdom. I think it's called Ofcom, and I could be wrong on the details here, but they've actually called out the degree to which the likes of the BBC and others are captured by these ideologues who are acting as, well, a handbrake on certain topics, but are also acting to censor topics they don't like. And so how these, Rainbow Tick and other groups operate is that they come and accredit you, and you can then say that you're fully in support of the LGBTIQ plus community. They give you, as you can see there, the nice little rainbow tick, and you get to prove that you're putting in the right policies according to them. And as I say, it's akin to a priesthood, because it's really based on a set of beliefs. But once your organization, and like our mainstream media are captured, then you've got to keep that accreditation going. And so you've got to keep going back to these priests, for want of a better term, to get approval. And one of the more I think insidious aspects when it comes to mainstream media is what is happening around the lack of stories. As you say, if you were to pick up any mainstream media, they are not talking about that Finnish study around how mental health declines. They're not talking about the recent studies coming out of the likes of Sweden. They barely talk about the Cass report, and when they do, they try to knock it down. They'll go running after radical groups like Partha, but they're not speaking to a Family First or to doctors here in New Zealand who have grave concerns around this malpractice. They're not reporting from overseas. And as I say, I'm pretty sure it was coming out of the UK, Ofcom, their office around communications, sort of like an overseer of their media is saying, hey, there's just far too much control by these ideologically compromised people, which is a real problem. And I think somewhat related to it is this BSA decision. And I want to be really clear, the BSA I don't think is focused strictly on the trans issue, but they are, I would suggest, ideologically captured, and they've been desperate to be able to assert their control into alternative media, such as like the Platform, which is where they first targeted, RCR, of course, Family First, where I am. I think we're next in line. And I think part of it, and some of you might think I'm drawing a bit too long a bow here, but I think part of it is the BSA does want to control what is and isn't discussed just as legacy media pretty much have one view on the trans issue. They promote almost a singular view around, I don't know, climate change, treaty issues, generally left-right politics. They won't talk about abortion. They won't talk about euthanasia, for example. I mean, I've found even in the foreign affairs space, as I've been trying to write in different articles to newspapers, op-ed pieces, they don't get published. Those in support of the Islamic Republic, or you have grave concerns of what the Americans are doing, they get published, and that's fine. I think that's actually a good thing. You don't get as many voices in the contrary, and that's my take on it. But, the BSA is clearly keen, I think, to ensure it can direct who can speak and on what topics. Because one thing that will happen is you will get these vexatious types who will just spend all day, every day, waiting for some opportunity to find that, I didn't like what you said. I mean, this initial BSA complaint about Sean Plunkett on the platform is around the fact that he said that tikanga is mumbo jumbo. That's the extent of what he said. Hardly offensive, in my opinion. I mean, people say that religious belief all the time, and don't go running off into a corner crying. But every time there's a complaint, the BSA will be following it up, and you end up sort of dying by 1,000 cuts, where the process is the punishment. And so I think it's all sort of linked there, but I suppose it's a long way of me. And I've sort of stuck to one topic today, partly because I knew I was pre-recording and had a bit more time to reflect on it. It is ultimately be aware of the stories you are not being told, and you become aware of those by listening to things like Solid Ground, Daybreak, tune into the likes of RCR, the platform, and others, read widely, check out the various podcasts that are around, and then question what you do see. And again, there may be people here of different views than I do around the trans issue, and that's fine. But when you pick up an article, particularly in the mainstream media, and doubly so if it's the likes of Radio New Zealand and TVNZ, which are taxpayer-funded, your taxes, ask if both sides are being presented. Because I want to actually, sort of as I wrap up on this part, is to stress I want to see both sides. I don't want our legacy media to be only reporting, let's say, a conservative or scientific view. Now, I don't mind them having the opinions of others, but they're not doing that, of course. They're just going in one direction. As I say, this Herald article was just the classic case, an emotional puff piece promoting the usual tropes and lies and no alternative, which I think was sad. Somewhat linked to it, and this is coming out of America from the New York Post, long and short, during the Biden era, which they don't like to talk about too much, he basically, trying to think how to quickly explain this, basically was trying to censor various conservative and right-leaning organisations. So think Daily Wire, think PragerU. And what it was doing was forcing people to fact-check. They were funding groups to fact-check these organisations and what they were saying. And at one level you go, well, what's wrong with that? But of course the fact-checkers come with their own prejudices and biases. And so in effect it amounted to censorship as the Biden administration was trying to silence people who had a different viewpoint to themselves. So they've settled. That's the long and the short of it. They've settled. They've admitted they shouldn't have done this, and they've gone out of court. But I think that's a win, and it's something that we just need to be, I think, very aware of, is the ever-growing creep of government to try and control what you do, think, say, and believe. And look, it is happening all around the world. And I sat down a few days ago with Sarah McLaughlin from FIRE. FIRE is pretty much one of the leading pro-belief, pro-free speech groups in America. And Sarah is an amazing young woman. And she talks in the podcast that if free speech was a patient in hospital, it's in very bad condition, almost on life support, particularly around the West, as what you are allowed to say is becoming more and more difficult, more and more constrained. And how governments are running about saying, well, who will think of the children? We have to protect all the children. Oh, and by the way, that means we're going to have to censor and limit your own speech. They're running around saying, we need hate speech to protect minorities. And long and short, in our podcast, we dissect together what's happening around the world, here in New Zealand as well, and the trends. So I think really important, or I found it a fascinating podcast. The other thing to bear in mind, she's going to be down here with the Free Speech Union. They're bringing her down, and I think it's in the coming days. So check out the Free Speech Union's website for details on their social media, because I'd say Sarah is very much worth listening to. Hey, and I thought I would actually speaking of young people, this has just come out from Greece, so they're going to actually look to ban social media for under 15-year-olds. So that you can see more and more countries moving into this space. And I mentioned on Tuesday how here in New Zealand, the Prime Minister was saying that he's actually looking at how they do age verification as well around access of pornography. Now, of course, that's always going to require, it's the same with social media ban. The way that you know someone is 15 or 14 is just the same that you need to know if someone's 60 or 70, 50 or 30. So age verification will impact all of us, but it's certainly one area where Family First has expressed interest. We think more needs to be done to hold big tech to account. That's our take on things. We are very aware, because I'm sure people are in the comments, not that I can see them in this pre-record, we'll be talking digital IDs. We don't support digital IDs. We don't support sort of an internet czar. We don't support heavy government-handedness into this space. But we do feel that more needs to be done to help parents and to help children, because they are, what's the right way to say it, an easy target for big tech. I mean, these are big organizations. And as we've talked in weeks prior, the likes of Meta have been called out by whistleblowers and in court for behaviours and decisions they're making that they know are harming kids. So we'll keep an eye on not only what Greece is doing, but the UK, Australia, of course. So no shortage of stuff. But I do recommend, again, go and listen to this podcast with Sarah. She's got a different view to me. She's not in favour of any of these social media bans for young people. So we do discuss that. So you'll get both sides there, which I think is good. It wasn't any heated debate or anything. It was actually just very, very helpful. Speaking of discussions, on my RCR hat on, sat down with Gilda Kirkpatrick recently. She's an Iranian New Zealander, or a New Zealand Iranian, sharing her impressions. So check that out. We've still got our counterculture, our new youth panel. They are fantastic. And even though my face is there, it will not be me on Thursday night, because when political playback is happening, it'll be right in the middle of the conference. So I'm not able to step out for that. So that face will be replaced with someone else. I believe it's Peter Williams. He will be fantastic. Peter is always a great addition to the show. So that's going to be 5 o'clock tonight, Thursday. And a final reminder, I mean, you guys know this, particularly if you're regular, our Family First website is just so full of content where you can watch, read and listen. And if you still have time after engaging all our content, jump across to Substack. That's where both Bob and I write. You can look up obviously Bob's name or blog, or look up my name or On Point, and you'll find my content. Bob and I are often discussing different topics. And again, finally, a big thanks for everyone who's been wonderfully supportive of our, over these 20 years. We are celebrating, as you know, our 20th anniversary. All the support you can offer us, from prayer to liking our content, subscribing if you're on the likes of YouTube, or to our email, telling friends and family, of course, a donation, all and anything is welcome. But I'm going to leave it there. And as I said at the start, this is a pre-record for this particular show of Solid Ground. Rach and I are in Perth for an education conference. Very much looking forward to that. But with the time differences, it was just a little bit too difficult to balance to be up at 7 a.m. New Zealand time when I'm in Perth. So I look forward to seeing you all again on next Tuesday. I will be back in New Zealand. But in the meantime, you have a great day.